Hare Krishna, mute is on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1. Chapter 15, the Pandavas retire. Time. Text number 27. You all have it? Yeah. Desha Kalartha Yuktani.
Desha Kalartha Yuktani.
Ritapo Samani Cha.
Ritapo Pashamani Cha.
Haranti Smartas Chittam.
Haranti Smaratas Chittam.
Govindam Vitani Me.
Govindam Vitani Me.
Desha Kalartha Yuktani.
Desha Kalartha Yuktani.
Ritapo Pasamani Cha.
Ritapo Pasamani Cha.
Haranti Smaratas Chittam.
Haranti Smaratas Chittam.
Govinda Vinitani Me.
Govinda Vitani Me.
Desha Kalartha Yuktani.
Desha Kalartha Yuktani.
Ritapo Pasamani Cha.
Ritapo Pasamani Cha.
Haranti Smaratas Chittam.
Haranti Smaratas Chittam.
Govinda Vinitani Me.
Govinda Vitani Me.
Desakalarthayuktani.
Desakalarthayuktani.
Ritapopasamani cha.
Ritapopasamani cha.
Haranti smarataschitam.
Haranti smaratas chittam.
Govinda vitani me.
Govinda Vitani Me. Desha,
Desha,
space.
space.
Kala,
Kala,
time.
time.
Artha,
Artha,
importance.
importance.
Yuktani,
Yuktani,
impregnated with.
impregnated with.
Rit,
Rit,
heart.
heart.
Tapa,
Tapa,
burning.
burning.
Upasamani,
Upasamani,
extinguishing.
extinguishing.
See how that Rit and heart, see how they're connected there, so close. Rit and heart. Cha
Cha
and
and
Bharanti
Bharanti
are attracted.
are attracted.
Smarata
Smarata
by remembering.
by remembering.
Chitam
Chitam
mind.
mind.
Govinda
Govinda,
supreme personality of pleasure.
the Supreme Personality of pleasure.
Abhitani
Abhitani
narrated by
directed by
May to me.
unto me.
Translation of Prabhupada's Divine Grace of the Prabhupada. Vijaya.
Jai.
Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and place. Herein Arjuna refers to the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, which was imparted to him by the Lord on the mountain of Kurukshetra. The Lord left behind him the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, not for the benefit of Arjuna alone, but also for all time and in all lands. The Bhagavad Gita, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of God, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. It is nicely presented by the Lord himself for all who have very little time to go through the vast Vedic literatures like Upanishads, Puranas, and Vedanta Sutras. It is put within the study of the great historic epic Mahabharata, which is especially prepared for the less intelligent class, namely the women, the laborers, and those who are worthless descendants of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and higher sections of the Vaishyas. The problem which arose in the heart of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was solved by the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. What was the problem? Arjuna had a problem, so the Bhagavad Gita solved the problem. What was the problem?
He was in distress to kill his relatives.
That's right. Grandfather, his teacher. That was a big test. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted again to remember the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, just to teach all concerned that the Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in all critical times, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of the great entanglements which may embarrass one in some critical hour. The merciful Lord left behind him the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita so that one can take the instructions of the Lord even when he is not visible to material eyesight. Material senses cannot have any estimation of the Supreme Lord, but by his inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate himself through the sense perception of the conditioned soul in a suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is also another form of the Lord's manifested energy. Thus, the Bhagavad Gita, or any authentic scriptural sound representation of the Lord, is also the incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between the sound representation of the Lord and the Lord himself. One can derive the same benefit from the Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in personal presence of the Lord. The faithful human being who is desirous of being liberated from the clutches of the material existence can very easily take advantage of the Bhagavad Gita. And with this in view, the Lord instructed Arjuna as if Arjuna were in need of it. He didn't need it because he's a pure devotee. He's all pastime. In the Bhagavad Gita, 5 important factors of knowledge have been delineated pertaining to 1. The Supreme Lord. 2. The living entity. 3. Nature. 4. Time and space. And 5. The process of activity, karma. Out of these, the Supreme Lord and the living being are qualitatively one. The difference between the two has been analyzed as the difference between the whole and the part and parcel. Nature is inert matter, displaying the interaction of 3 different modes, and eternal time and unlimited space are considered to be beyond the existence of material nature. Activities of the living being are different varieties of aptitudes which can entrap or liberate the living being within and without material nature. All these subject matters are concisely discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, and later these subject matters are elaborated in the Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment. Out of the 5 subjects, the Supreme Lord, the living entity, nature, and time, and space are eternal, but the living entity, nature, and time are under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is absolute and completely independent of any other control. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Controller. The material activity of the living being is beginningless, but it can be rectified by transferal into the spiritual quality. Thus, it can cease its material qualitative reactions. Both the Lord and the living entity are cognizant, and both have a sense of identification of being conscious as a living force. But the living being under the condition of material nature is called Mahatattva, misidentifies himself as being different from the Lord. The whole scheme of Vedic wisdom is targeted to the aim of eradicating such a misconception and thus liberating the living being from the illusion of material identification. When such an illusion is eradicated by knowledge and renunciation, the living beings are responsible actors and enjoyers also. The sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real, but such a sense in the living being is a sort of wishful desire only. This difference in consciousness is the distinction of the 2 identities, namely the Lord and the living being. Otherwise, there is no difference between the Lord and the living being. The living being is therefore eternally one and different simultaneously. The whole instruction of the Bhagavad Gita stands on this principle. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord and the living beings are described as Sanatan, or eternal, and the Lord's abode, far beyond the material sky, is also described as Sanatan. The living being is invited to live in the Sanatan existence of the Lord, and the process which can help a living being to approach the Lord's abode, where the liberated activity of the soul is exhibited, is called Sanatan Dharma. One cannot, however, reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being free from the misconception of material identification. And the Bhagavad Gita gives us the clue how to achieve this stage of perfection. The process of being liberated from the misconception of material identification is called in different stages: fruitive activity, empiric philosophy, and devotional service, up to the transcendental realization. Such transcendental realization is made possible by dovetailing all the above items in relation with the Lord. Prescribed duties of the living being is, as directed in the Vedas, can gradually purify the sinful mind of the conditioned soul and raise him to the stage of knowledge. The purified stage of acquiring knowledge becomes the basis of transcendental devotional service to the Lord. As long as one is engaged in researching the solution of the problems of life, his knowledge is called jnana, or purified knowledge. But on realizing the actual solution of life, one becomes situated in the devotional service of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita begins with the problems of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter, and proves by all reason and argument that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances, and that the outer covering of matter, the body and the mind, change from another term of material existence, which is full of miseries. The Bhagavad Gita is therefore meant for terminating all different types of miseries, and Arjuna took shelter of this great knowledge which had been imparted to him during the Kurukshetra. When we gather them all this day, Hukum Gurdavacha, Gomno, Day Green, Yakripa, the Umban, Shri. Vanchitapati Vishta, Kripa Sundar, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivastava Gaur Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram. I thought we just says this purport is a lot about the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. I thought we'd go through chapter to chapter, different verses of the Bhagavad Gita, and see how far we get. Of course, anyway, how many verses Krishna spoke in the first chapter?
All of them. None. Oh, no, none of them.
You didn't speak any. It's observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And then contents of the Gita summarized. One of my favorite verses in Krishna, he says, knowing what is it? Can't believe it. Already first verse I can't remember. What is it? 50? No, 48. Knowing myself? No. Well, I can't believe it. Well, so much for that idea. Get a Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, get a Bhagavad Gita. That's thank you. It's one of the last verses of the Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter. And Krishna says, one of my favorite verses. Well, yeah, and what my memory was gradually fading away. So he says, in second chapter. Okay. Apoyamana achala pratishnam samudama papasanti yedvat tedvat kamayan brahmasanti sarve sasanti apnoti. He says, a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean. So many desires, so many material desires are entering, right? But some desires, they let go. And from reading the Bhagavad Gita, we know what desires to let go and what desires to keep. And just like the ocean, so many rivers, big rivers, so much water going into the ocean. What's the biggest river that has the most water going into the ocean? Anybody know? Biggest river, most water going into the ocean, Amazon. Amazon, because you got the Amazon forests, the rainforest, so much water. It's like amazing how much water is going in. If you stand on one end, one side of the river, and you look to the other, there's some places where you can't see the other side. It's such a big river, you can't imagine. It's huge. And when the waves come together, it's like you could hear them from miles away because the big waves coming off the river too. And coming in from the ocean. It's pretty amazing. It's a lot of water, but it stays steady. Yeah, the water doesn't come. Just that line there on the beach. It doesn't go home, fortunately. So similarly, so many desires will come. We let those material desires go, and the spiritual desires we keep. Cherish. Thank Krishna, we have spiritual desires still. Which is ever being filled but was always steady, can alone achieve peace, cannot the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So this is how to be peaceful. If we have these gross material desires, then we can't be peaceful. But if we have the spiritual desires, then we can be peaceful. In the third chapter, Arjuna, he asked Krishna, what is it that forces a person to act practically against his own will? Kameshu, Krodeshu, Rajamusmu, Mahasana, Mahapa, Vijaya. It is lust only, Arjuna. Born in the mode of passion, transformed into anger, and the all-devouring sinful enemy of the Lord. From lust comes so much anger. I don't know, I mentioned this before, but in the San Diego temple, there's a gym. There was a gym just across the street. And there was one lady that left her boyfriend to this big muscle-bound guy. And this guy went, they were just leaving, his ex-girlfriend and this big guy were just leaving. And this guy went up with a gun. Anger. Anger. Yeah, from lust comes anger. Frustrated lust comes anger. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of frustration. Frustrated lust. And that from that comes anger. As lust is called the little brother of anger. So better to just desire to serve Krishna. Then Krishna says right after that, Tasma Tvam Niyanya. He says, therefore, from the very beginning, curb this great symbol of lust by regulating the senses and slay this formidable enemy. It's a formidable enemy. This is, people they think it's good to have lust. To have love, that's good. And the difference is iron and gold. Big difference. They're both metals. But gold, so much more valuable, so much nicer. So then the fourth chapter, Krishna, he says, Sahevaya Maya Tedya, Yoga Protota, Bhaktosimya Sikhaji, Yosamita. This very ancient science of relationship with the Supreme and the Divinity is today told by me to you, Arjuna, because you're my devotee as well as my friend. And therefore you're able to understand the transcendental mystery of science. Because this devotee is your friend. Therefore he could understand the mystery. It's a great mystery, actually, to understand Bhagavad Gita. So many millions of people have read the Bhagavad Gita. And so many, even devotees, the first time they read it, couldn't understand it. They read it again. It's something you got to read again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And then hopefully it sinks in. And therefore we have chapter a day. Helps us to enter into the mystery. And then Krishna says, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Manmayama. Being free from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me. Many, many persons in the past have become purified by knowledge of me and have thus attained. So Krishna's encouraging us. He's encouraging them. You just continue on. Many, many persons in the past, they become purified. And that's the whole goal. We want to get purified. It's like every day we bathe, we take a shower. So every day also, we're taking a subtle shower. Our mind is getting cleansed. Our heart is getting cleansed. Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavadya. Cleansing the mirror of the heart, cleansing the mirror of the mind. It's the subtle shower that we have to do every day. And eventually, hopefully, we'll become completely cleansed. No more material desire, no more mind. Just Krishna. Won't that be nice? That's what we're looking for. That's the goal. Be completely clean. It's like there's a river here in California. When I was on traveling Sankirtan, we found this river. It was maybe 10 feet deep. And it was completely clear, transparent. I don't think I've ever seen a river so clean and so deep. It's like amazing. Generally, rivers are pretty dirty. This is so clean. So transparent. So this is also, we want to have a transparent mind, transparent heart, just Krishna. Not sifted through our contaminated consciousness We should see Krishna not as he is, but as we think he is. Contaminated consciousness. So we're trying to get free of this contaminated consciousness. And then in the 5th chapter, nice verse, Yoga Yukta Vishrutatma, Vegetatma Jitendriya, Sarvatatma Hutatma, Kurvanapinavite. Krishna says, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Nice verse. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. It's all about controlling the mind and senses, focusing on Krishna and service, devotion and service. Like Prabhupada, everybody loved Prabhupada because he had a controlled mind, controlled senses, pure. Like there's tens of thousands of pictures. I mean, generally older people aren't that very attractive. But not Prabhupada. He was attractive, very attractive. He would show up in an airport and there'd be hundreds of devotees to meet him because he was spiritual. Jnanena tuta ajnanam yesam nasanam desam aditya adgyanam kasi tattva. 5th chapter also. Jnanena. When one is in knowledge by which, when one has a knowledge by which ignorance is destroyed, that knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So knowledge is very valuable. We get knowledge of Krishna, we get knowledge of the soul, we get knowledge of, as we're saying, as we're hearing here, we get knowledge of nature. And so much knowledge is there. And that gets revealed to us as we advance in Krishna's consciousness. In the 6th chapter, Udaratmanatmanam Natmanam Avasana Atmeli Atmeli Atmaiva Atmaiva. And one must deliver oneself with the help of the mind and not degrade oneself. The mind can be the friend or the enemy of the living enemy. For one who has conquered the mind is the best friend. For he has failed to do so, it's the worst enemy. For he has conquered the mind, the super soul is reached. Therefore he has attained tranquility. So one might ask, well, how can my mind be my enemy? Well, what is it when someone has an enemy? What do they usually do to an enemy? We're talking about materialistic people. They try to harm them. Sometimes they create some conspiracy, like in businesses, that happens sometimes where you make some false claim about someone you don't like. Yeah, that happens, doesn't it? Or sometimes there's this just verbal abuse. In America here, they have the saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me." The kids, that's what the kids would say to each other. Because the kids, they'd always saying some nasty remark to other kids. "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me." But names actually hurt. They do hurt subtly. The sticks and bones will grossly, but also call someone a name, it could hurt. Especially when it's coming from someone you have, that's dear to you. So, and even to the point of violence. So if someone has an enemy, they'll even come to the point of killing. Killing someone. So we are our own enemy when we do things that harm us. Just like when this movement, this is a transcendental movie. When this movement started, everybody was very strict. Because Prabhupada was very strict. And so there was nobody would think of, going to a movie or watching TV, or of course we didn't have phones back then. I mean, if Prabhupada were here and we had these phones, I bet Prabhupada would be very strict. Because now it's just like social media, it's like, I mean, everybody's watching social media. It's just such a distraction to our devotional service. But I'm sure Prabhupada, actually, he did make a statement like this when they first had this first, when technology was first coming out. And they had this, I forgot what it's called. Remember what it was called? What was that? Telex. So Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, and they were telling Prabhupada, we had this new machine called Telex, and we could contact New York Temple right now, and they could respond immediately. And so the devotees, typed in something, Hare Krishna, and they didn't respond. And then they were waiting to respond. Prabhupada sitting there waiting. And the devotees said, then they put something, Prabhupada is standing right next to us, respond immediately. And then they responded, Jai Prabhupada, we're looking forward to you coming in 2 weeks, Jai, Jai, Jai. Some devotees signed their names. And the devotees said, so what do you think of this, Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, it should not be implemented. Otherwise, so much prajapa. So much prajapa. He saw it immediately. And isn't it? Like Facebook, so much prajapa. So much waste of time. People spend hours, devotees spend hours on Facebook. It's a waste of time. So that's harmful. If we waste time, we're harming ourselves. If we eat bhoga, if we eat things that aren't offered first to Krishna, harm ourselves. If we associate with non-devotees, like on book distribution, so we have to associate with people. We're giving them our association. But if we stretch it and start, getting their association, that could be harmful. I mean, there's been examples of devotees on book distribution. I'll meet a lady and she's nice, she's into a spiritual life, and he gets a book, and she says, well, can I keep in touch with you? And if I have any questions, yeah, sure. And then gives the email or phone number, and then their interaction going on, and then eventually too much interaction. He ends up leaving the temple, marrying her. Is that a good time? And then they don't get divorced. Because she was maybe interested, but wasn't a devotee. So we associate too much with a non-devotee. That harms ourselves. There's so many ways that we can harm ourselves. If we also just subtly, if we think of things that are not devotional, then of course in Kali Yuga, you don't get a reaction for thinking of things that are sinful. In other ages, they would, just for thinking something sinful, you get a reaction. Now, if we had that in Kali Yuga, everybody would be dead. Because there's so much sinful thought going on. It's scary. Like devotees would be in front of Prabhupada, and they can understand that Prabhupada could read people's mind and feel a little uncomfortable, Because Prabhupada, many devotees had that feeling that Prabhupada could read my mind. So, therefore, we're trying to get a pure mind. So many things that we can do that can harm us. In that way, our own mind is our enemy, or it can be our friend. If we're always doing things that are pleasing to Krishna, then it's our friend. If we're always thinking of things that are pleasing to Krishna, then our mind is our friend. Now, before coming to Krishna consciousness, our mind was a full-on enemy, because we're all thinking of nonsense. But now we've gotten the Bhagavad Gita, we've gotten the association of Prabhupada and so many devotees. Now we know what to think of, what not to think of. So if we always think of things that we should think of, which is such as Krishna. Therefore, Vaiseshki always says that, and I say, keep the transcendental vibration going. No room for Maya. And Prabhupada says this process is the no gap process. Is Krishna, 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 no gap. No room for Maya. So that's a nice verse in the sixth chapter. In the seventh chapter, there's so many nice verses in the second chapter. What's your favorite verse in the seventh chapter?
Matta Patarana Kinchivasthi There is no truth superior to me than me. My Matta Patarana.
Everything rests on me.
Everything rests on me as the pearls are strung on a thread.
Yes. So seventh chapter is like it's filled with so much nectar. What's the name of the seventh chapter? Knowledge of the Absolute. Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yoga Mayasmana Nuriyam Nuriyam. When I read this verse, when the first time I read this verse, Krishna said, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know me, I'm unborn and infallible. And I was thinking, yeah, those fools out there, they don't know Krishna. This is what Krishna is saying. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. But then after reading the Bhagavad Gita over and over and over, then I got to realize I'm one of those fools. I'm one of those fools that doesn't understand Krishna. Very few people understand Krishna. Even, Krishna said that just a few understood who he was when he was here on the planet. Very few understood who Krishna was. So to understand Krishna is a great mystery. It's a great mystery. Then in the 8th chapter, attaining the Supreme, Kaving Pranam Manasasatana, the neural notion mystery, and Sarvasatata, the teacher. Adityavanam Tamasapasti. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, this is how we should think of him. Nice, we're supposed to think of Krishna. So Krishna, he tells us, all right, this is how to think of him. Kavi Prana was like Prabhupada, he was known as Kavi. Because he was such a poet, such a good poet. So Kavi means he who knows everything. So we should think of Krishna as he who knows everything. This is God. This is what makes him great. I was speaking to my sister the other day, and as we were talking, she was speaking about herself. She said, yeah, I'm great. I'm great. I sent her a text. The next day I said, it's nice that you think you're great, but you should keep that to yourself. Don't tell anyone. I told her that everybody likes it when people are humble. Nobody likes pride. So I sent her that. Actually, Jesus also said that the meek shall inherit the world. And then I quoted now the peace of Nietzsche. But she didn't accept. It's amazing pride. It's amazing. But people aren't taught that we should be humble. Nobody's taught to be humble. In America, they're proud Americans. They like that. Yeah. We're not Americans. Spirit souls. You have to be humble. So Kaving Prana, Krishna, he's the oldest person. Now we're also old. How old are we? Returner. Very old. But Krishna, he's Adi. He's the original. He's very old. But he never looks old. You never see Krishna with gray hair. It's like I have gray hair coming out all over the place. Krishna is very old, no gray hair, no wrinkles. No problem. He doesn't have to go to a, what they call the cosmetic place, make himself look better. What do they have this? They have these, they take shots now to get relieved of
Botox.
huh?
Botox.
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 Botox. Even the people that don't have wrinkles are doing it. To get rid of it, nobody wants wrinkles. Nobody wants gray hair. Krishna doesn't have this problem. Kaling pranam anusastara. That he's the supreme controller. Everybody's controlling something. We're all doing some control. It's like there was a nice meal just made for the devotees. So he's controlling the pots and he's got his spoon and he's a little some control there. Krishna, he's part of Ishvara. He's the supreme controller, controls everything. But Krishna, actually, he can also be controlled by God. He likes to be controlled by God. That's the only thing that controls Krishna. It's love. Kaving pranam manusas, Anor and the young son. He's smaller than the smallest. Very small, but very big. Savasya Dakara Machinchi Rupam, that he's maintaining everyone. It's amazing. Sometimes people are concerned, how are they going to survive? Someone might lose their job, how are they going to survive? But the birds are being fed, the worms, the mosquitoes, the bears, the elephants. Everybody's being fed somehow. Krishna's maintaining everything. And therefore it's said that Krishna, he gives and he gives and he gives and he forgives. And we get and we get and we get and we forget. Yeah, we shouldn't forget. Very appreciative. Adityavarna, that Krishna, he's glowing, he's effulgent like the sun. Therefore, devotees, sometimes they see Krishna for the first time, and the effulgence is so great. Please, can you remove this effulgence, Krishna? So I can see the effulgence. Tamasa parastat. Krishna is never overcome by ignorance or any modes of nature. He's the controller of the modes of nature. In the 9th chapter, Raja Vijaya, Raja Guru, every time we don't Pratyakshava the moon, Sukhun, the king of education. People are being taught so many things, but they're not being taught what is most important. Like when Prabhu was at MIT, Massachusetts Institute for Technology, one of the top schools, Prabhupada said, where is the course where you could understand the difference between matter and spirit? And the students were like, yeah, I get it. Why can't we learn something about it? That which is most important, the soul. Like Socrates, one of the most educated, he's the father of modern philosophy. He spoke a lot about, so much information about the soul. It's amazing, he didn't even get any information from anybody else, just so intelligent. He figured it out, that we're all spirit souls. We're all eternal souls in Krishna. Amazing. So this is real now. Raja Vijaya, Raja Guya. Again, the great secret. It's a mystery. It's a great secret. It's like so many people have read the Bhagavad Gita. How many people understand it? Even scholars. And said it's not unto Krishna that one must surrender, but unto the unborn within Krishna, as though there's a difference. I met one person in Australia who, while I was distributing books, he had a Bhagavad Gita, had read it, and as I was speaking to them, he said, I'm Krishna and she's Radha. I said, that's what everybody thinks. They thought they were special. I'm Krishna and she said, yeah, I'm Radha. They're always trying to be God, trying to be Krishna. Such fools. Raja Vijaya Rajaguyam Pavitram. This knowledge is the purest knowledge. You go to a university, there's no pure knowledge. They're teaching how to be attached to the material nature, how to live nicely in the material nature, how to be attached. And Bhagavad Gita is teaching how to be detached to material nature and attached to Krishna. So this is real education, pure education, not contaminated. Like the scientists, they come up with a theory, and then a few years later, they'll say, "Oh, actually, we were mistaken. This is the actual understanding." And then a few years later, they'll change that. You got to change the textbooks, isn't it? So they have to change the textbooks. Made a mistake there. Although the students had to study it so much and get it right, but it was wrong. Pavitram, it's transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge. Knowledge in this world that we've been fed for so many years is not knowledge. It's so much ignorance. Like you go to school and you gotta study the evolution theory. And they have this idea that the giraffe, they have a long neck because they had to reach to get the food, right? And people, "Oh, that makes sense. All right." Isn't it? In school, we're all taught that, right? Garbage. What do they call that? They call it, we got the term. Natural selection. Nonsense. Rascals. So, no, the giraffe was born that way. Of course, it was smaller, but he was always born with a long neck. Raja Vijaya Raja Pavitam Pratyek Sat, and it's because it gives direct perception of the self through realization. It's the perfection of religion. It's everlasting and it's joyfully. Such a beautiful words. Joyfully performed. Perfection of religion. Such a nice divine process. Well, I got to chapter 9. Some of Krishna's instructions, divine instructions. Any question? Yes.
Right. I 3 questions. Some were from the book and a couple were
Yeah, you're listening well. Very good.
long. The first question I had was I think Prabhupada mentions that by the Lord's inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate himself to the sense perception of the conditioned souls in a suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is another form of most manifested energy. Does he ever manifest in a material body? Because I don't manifest as a book, like Bhagavad Gita as a deity, but
There is a mention I recently read that there is an instance where Krishna, he manifested, I can't exactly remember, it was as a so-called material body. Yeah. So that's what that would refer to, that statement. An apparent material body, but it's not material.
if it's more like Krishna just comes in a spiritual body, that's basically
Generally, that's the way.
This is maybe just a technical question, because Prabhupada says out of the 5 subjects, the Supreme Lord, the living entity, nature, and time, and space are eternal. But the living entity, nature, and time are under direction of the Supreme Lord. What about space?
Space is also, that's also a matter. That's also a matter. It's just like there's space in between you and me. Well, it's matter. It's not, there's something there, it's space. It's matter. Just like this world is going to be all wrapped up eventually. So space will also go.
Okay.
Everything gets wrapped up.
So Krishna is in charge under the
under the control of everything.
even
Space too.
okay. And then I had all right, so let's quickly I think towards the end Prabhupada says that the Bhagavad Gita begins with the problems of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter, proves by all reason and argument that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances, and that the outer coverings of matter, the body and mind, change from another term of material existence, which is full of existence. Does this mean like when you switch bodies, your body?
Yeah, spirituality.
Oh, okay, when you leave. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the goal. To give up this material body with these gross senses
okay.
and get our original. This is foreign. The life we're living now in these material bodies is foreign to the soul. And Prabhupada said one time that the soul is embarrassed to be in the material body. Because what is the nature of the soul? Eternality, knowledge, and bliss. But we're stuck in this body that's temporary, so much ignorance and so much unhappiness. So the soul is embarrassed to be in the material body.
But when we're in this material world, we keep the same mind, intelligence, falsely. We carry
Contaminated though.
we carry that with us throughout. That doesn't change while
Yeah, when the soul leaves the body, you take your mind with you. And therefore people have dreams, like far out dreams, like where'd that come from? I had a sister, well, not a sister, a niece, I was babysitting, and she was in her bed, and it was late at night, and she just started screaming. I mean, just screaming. And I shook her and said, it's okay. She said, no, it's okay. She wouldn't wake up. I picked her up. It's okay, wake up. It's just a dream. She was still screaming. She wouldn't stop screaming. My God, I'm only 16 years old. I'm just a kid. So I went across the street to our neighbors. I said that my niece is screaming. She won't stop. Please, can you help? She's having some horrible nightmare, some past life or something. So my neighbor, she came in and she saw her still in bed screaming. And my neighbor, she said, go get a cup of water. I said, all right. I always thought she was going to throw it in her face. But she told her, my niece, here. She handed the cup and said, drink this. And my niece grabbed the cup. She drank it, snapped out of it. Couldn't believe it. Somehow she knew what to do, you know. She told her, drink this. And she drank it, snapped out. But there was some horrible dream. That's not. So there's things that are there, subconscious. And therefore also people there, actually if people ask about reincarnation, there's a professor, Ian Stevenson, who did a whole research on people that had experiences of their past life. Something interesting, most of them were in India. And they were kids, 4-year-old kids, they don't know about, conspiracies, making things up, they're just innocent kids. And they would tell about places where they lived. And then they would go. They had never left that village before. They would take, hundreds of miles away and tell them, yeah, I used to live there, but there used to be a window here. And then they covered up, yeah, there's the window. It's still all kinds of evidence from that. And what's really amazing is there a story of you can actually look it up on the internet. A young boy, he was fascinated with planes. Fascinated with planes. And he would have dreams. And he would be speaking in the dream. And he would be telling about the plane that he flew. And he would say, crash, mommy, crash, mommy. He's speaking out like this. And then it'd say the name of the plane.
Oh.
And they looked it up. And there was, in World War II, there was a plane that was named that. And it's like, he was just fascinated with planes. And this kid, they're Christians, but this kid was convinced reincarnation. But the parents were Christians, so it was kind of hard for them to catch that. But he was going into details about, it's on the internet.
James Huston,
There it is. Yes.
Soul Survival.
Sole survivor of the plane crash.
That's the name of the book. Or
Oh, the book. They have a book about it.
yeah,
Well, finally, he wrote a book about it.
the reincarnation of a World War II fighter pilot.
Yeah. I mean, people read that and say, "Whoa, that's pretty." That's pretty amazing. You're just a little kid, you're fascinated with planes, and then he gives all this information about this plane that had crashed. He also had died.
Mm.
And he met people also that were of the same platoon, same force, military force. Amazing. I believe in incarnation, yeah. Yeah.
So these are just a couple of questions in general. One, during our class that we had on last Thursday,
Yeah.
the university class preaching, one of the person that came, they asked the question, why Christians? How
That's what they say in India.
yeah,
Was he Indian?
he's Indian, yeah, not,
Of course.
how do you answer that in a way, in the right way? I'm just not sure how, I just don't know.
Well, Krishna is the only person that said, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, I'm the source of all material and spiritual, everything emanates from me.
Hmm.
The wise and noble spiritually engage in my devotional service. He also says, Mata Parcharam Nanyat. Everything emanates from, I'm the source, everything emanates from me like pearls strung on a thread. So Krishna is the only person that said that. Shiva didn't say that. Ram didn't say that. No incarnations say that. Narayan doesn't say that. Only Krishna says that. So he's saying it himself. Nobody else says that the Supreme Personality of God, that they're the cause, the source of all incarnations. Krishna's to Bhagavan Svaya, Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, I'm the source of all incarnations. So no one else says that. So makes sense to just follow what Krishna said.
And sorry, my last question was it was about the reincarnation evolution you were mentioning. I know that in different yugas, like the human beings are like larger and have longer lifespans. Are those different species, or is it the same species, but it's this body itself evolves through time and becomes degraded to
Smaller?
yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that. Because it's said that even we get small. It's amazing that if you go through, there's some countries, in Europe, everybody's huge. What was it? It's that's the name of the country. But there's some places where people are very small. Like in Mexico, people are generally very small. Not all of them, in general, but we get smaller. We go to when the king that burned Kaliyavana, what was his name?
Yeah, Kali. Muchukunda.
Muchkunda. When he had lived in another age, and when he woke up, he was surprised to see people are so small. There was a change because of the time. So I think people get smaller.
So that evolution is a thing, but it just obviously doesn't describe the soul. There's nothing there, but evolution could be like the body changing, transforming through humans.
Yeah, it's just the body changes.
Okay.
They're much bigger before.
Okay. So evolution could be it doesn't necessarily
It's not.
contradict what we're it's hard to think.
The evolution theory is that there was an amoeba,
Oh man.
right? And then eventually, there was, I don't know, there was a worm.
Nothing.
Then there was plants, all this speculation. But in the Bhagavatam, it says that the first living being was Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma was the first.
Yeah.
He came from the lotus flower. The most exalted person, the most elevated person was the first. Not just some amoeba and then a worm and butterfly or whatever. No.
But
And he created He created, actually, many I think were created through his mind.
Yes.
Subtle.
But you could say like the generations go by, the general bodies can change. So that's also part of evolution. Yes. Just like how in different units.
So there's 6,400,000 different species. So it's not that they're evolving, they're there.
Hmm.
They're not evolving from one species to another like that. No, they're there. The species are already there.
Mhm.
And they're being localized. Being,
But the species,
there's 400,000 different humans.
Yeah.
And I think Prabhu mentioned that there's just like there's Chinese, there's Africans, there's different species. Go ahead.
but I guess like from let's say from previous Yuga was Dwarka.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Dwarka Yuga to Kali Yuga, that change in the human body from bigger, longer lifespan to smaller.
Sure.
How does that happen? The Bhagavatam mentioned, can you say that's a kind of
It's just it gradually just happens. You get shorter lifespan. Like they used to live for 100,000 years.
yeah.
Now, if you live for 100, it's pretty rare. And people get smaller. Yeah, just gradually through time, they get somehow mysteriously, another mysterious thing. Hard to understand about little brain, but yeah, body gets smaller.
Because I know like a million years, let's say just 1,000 years ago, the average human is shorter.
The what?
The average human was like 5 foot, shorter, but then just 1,000 years ago.
Oh, shorter. Where do you get that from?
Just like the average.
Scientists?
Average European.
Where do you get that from?
So
Science.
history, yeah.
Yeah, science. It's speculation. They're speculating. Don't put too much faith in science. I'm speculating. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.